Hey loves, this is just a quick video brought to you by Miss B about creating a working thesis and claim. So, we know that research, so far we have done the physical process of gathering information. There's also this mental process that's happening of deriving the answer to your question from that information that you gathered. So that's sort of the next step. So far we know that we have been curious about a topic, gathered our sources, assessed that information in terms of validity, reliability, timeliness, and importance, cited meaningful sources using our MLA format, and considered enough information, even if just preliminarily, to really say something meaningful about it. So our next step is to make some claims. I call this slide Making Claims and Taking Names, where you have arrived at a point where you can actually talk about and create a working thesis and claim. So there are a couple of different ways that theses and claims can go in this capacity and in most of them when we're doing research. So a couple of them are offering a compromise, acknowledging a problem and proposing a solution, exploring a cause and effect relationship to raise awareness or just exploring it, and communicating an objective, informed opinion. So this is not an opinion that's like, I think this, but it's sort of veiled in that way, where you present it as fact, and we'll go into that in a bit. So ultimately, though, you know where you stand on an issue, and you can create a one sentence or two, depending on how long the paper is, your eventual product. But in this case, we're looking for a one sentence answer to your research question or original curiosity. So what should I consider, right? So I'm here, I'm wondering, how do I make this claim? So there's three things that I want you to consider. Who is my target audience? So who's this like for? Is it for teenagers? Is it for children? Is it for adults? Is it for parents? Is it for people living in a certain part of the world, a certain socioeconomic level? But when we think about who we're talking about and who our audience is for this research, that's a really important thing to frame for ourselves and create context for. So who do I imagine will benefit from my thinking? The second question I want you to think about are there or what are the alternative arguments and perspectives out there? It's really important to consider alternative arguments and perspectives. It doesn't mean that it's going to be the counter argument in terms of like opposite, but that people are saying various things about what you're thinking about, and that if I say something, then someone else might suggest something different, and we can both be right. So we're really considering alternative perspectives. And then finally, is it specific enough to be arguable and reasonable enough that someone will listen? So we want it to be specific enough to be arguable and reasonable enough for someone to listen. These are just things to kind of consider as we're framing our thinking around creating the claim. One important distinction to make before we start doing this is the difference between argument and persuasion. So persuasion is what we were studying when we were really studying rhetoric, and how people can use language to manipulate and persuade people and use emotions to really persuade people that their position is correct. A persuasion is an attempt to win the audience over, often by appealing to emotions. Whereas an argument is still persuasive, but its strength lies in the claim and the sufficient evidence drawn from different sources, and then valid reasoning. So we're looking for reasoning over emotion. And that is an important distinction to think about before you make this claim or create this claim. It's not going to be like, because of the devastating circumstances of COVID-19, blah, blah, blah. So we're not aiming for people's emotions. We're really trying to use the evidence that we find to bowl them over with such great evidence that they have no other possibility really or option than to believe you. So argument over persuasion. So two strategies to find not your question, but your claim really is strategy number one is to free write. It helps to write yourself a little quick write exploring what you think about what you've researched so far. So my suggestion is to set a timer for 3 minutes and just don't stop writing. Just write and write and write and write. Here's a little example. If I was, for example, if my sort of answer to my question was around journaling and how I think journaling is important, then maybe I start with this. Ever since I was little, writing helped me deal with stuff I didn't even know I was going through. And after I did this research, it kind of made me realize that sometimes writing helps you get out of your head. But actually, sometimes it also makes you stay in your head, which isn't that great, but it seems like overall the benefits mostly outweigh the drawbacks, which is cool. So that's like very informal. That's me just free writing, quick writing, not stopping. There's, it's a run-on sentence. There's spelling errors, but I just kept going and going and going. And hopefully by doing that, it's really bothering me that I mistitled this, but strategies to find the answer to your question. But I think free writing is a really great way for some of you guys, or you can even kind of free speak into something to try to find what your answer might be. Strategy number 2 is to consider what that curiosity or question was that originally drove you, and then consider what direction your research took you. So you're thinking about like different topics and subtopics, things that and patterns that started to emerge. So if my question originally, my curiosity was, how might writing in a journal help with wellness during social isolation? Some of the categories of learning from my research emerged as stress relief, creativity, goal setting, and then also that there was a sort of alternative argument around the danger of focusing on negative emotions. So just starting there and then thinking about like, what might my answer be to that question based on some of those emerging patterns. So we're going to follow the Goldilocks rule. We don't want the question to be too broad, the claim to be too broad, such as journaling is beneficial for people. Okay, super broad. But I also don't want it to be too specific, like journaling is the only way to stay stress-free during the COVID-19 crisis, because that's not true. And it takes away from that sort of like reasonable argument that we're trying to make. So we're looking for just right. And I am going to come back to the 4 original angles possibly that you could take. And I'm just going to go briefly over 4 different possible claims or working thesis statements that I came up with. And I want you to think about those questions too. So who are the different audiences and who are the different sort of specific people that we're focusing on in each of these? And what do you notice about alternatives or arguable claims, even inherent in these claims? So the first one is offering a compromise. And I didn't, because I haven't like 100% researched this, you can sort of fill in the blank. But while gaming offers, I'm sure it offers a lot, journaling can create an important counterbalance. So this is the response to maybe an original question, which is like, which is better, gaming or journaling? And what this is doing is offering a compromise. The second one, thinking about problem solution. As long as screen time continues to dominate teenagers' lives, journaling offers a key outlet for the mind and spirit. Okay, so that's kind of like looking at this assumption or underlying assumption that screen time is dominating, but that journaling can offer that key outlet. The counter argument isn't so obvious, but there's still space for that. And you can see now the first one looked like it was more in terms of the audience is like people or teenagers or whomever who game is a sort of inherent audience. And in this one, it might be like parents or teenagers or even maybe people in school might be the audience that we're focusing on. And so now let's look at the last 2, exploring a cause and effect. By students journaling daily, it sharpens their cognitive functioning. So you can imagine, this seems a little bit more sterile. Maybe the audience is more like principals or teachers because of that word students. But there it is, and it's looking at a cause and effect. So the cause the cause is journaling, and the effect is a higher cognitive functioning. And then the last one, communicating an objective, informed opinion. This is the one that I warned about. You're not saying like, well, I think journaling is super cool. Instead, you're sort of veiling it, your opinion, but in a really arguable way. So journaling, though perceived by some as frivolous and self-serving, provides a powerful opportunity for introverts and extroverts alike to navigate social isolation. So you can kind of see like there's a different audience here. It's about people who are both extroverted and introverted. And it's looking at that like counter argument that some people look at it as frivolous, maybe, or self-serving, or a trap for negative thinking. But rather, it's looking at and saying, I think that it is a powerful opportunity without saying I think. So those are just 4 examples of what they might look like. And if you notice, I want you to think about a couple of words in here. So notice in the first one, there's the word while. In the second one, as long as. In the third one, by. And in the fourth one, though. If you need a place to start to kind of like think about making a sophisticated claim or working statement, you might start with a subordinating conjunction or try to squeeze one in there somewhere. So this, you can come back to this, but in here you can see that mostly I started with them, but in that last one, I interjected a little phrase to kind of change it up a bit. So that is where we are. And our challenge is that you are ready, set, and go, and you got this. And Miss Fitch and I are here to support you. Good luck.